Hi there, my name is Johan Helstand and we are going to have a look at another very interesting game from the Berkeley Summer IM Norm tournament. In this game we have with the white pieces Lisandra Ordaz from Cuba and playing black is Angelina Belakovskaya from the United States. So let's see this game. d4, d5, c4, the Queen's Gambit, but here black plays a rather uncommon opening line e5, the Albin counter gambit. It's not seen very often nowadays, but it is important to know how to deal with this opening if you're a d4 player with the white pieces. D takes e4, e4, d takes e5, d4. This is the key idea of the Albin counter gambit. Black is trying to achieve a grip on the dark squares. Knight f3, knight c6, and a3. A very good move. How to explain this move? Well, a natural move for white here would be e3, trying to swap the pawn on d4. However, black would then play bishop d4 check. And after bishop d2, black has pawn takes pawn. This is very uncomfortable for white because she will end up with a bad pawn structure. So this explains why a3 is such a common move in practice. a3 is what white played here in the game. Black replied with bishop g4. In this way, she's trying to recover the pawn by taking on f3 and on e5. However, white plays knight e2, indirectly protecting the pawn on e5, so that she can take on f3 with other knight. Queen e7. The idea of this move is to recapture the pawn once again while preparing long castling. But as we will see, things don't turn out very well for black in this game. I was thinking, I'm not an expert at all in this line, but I was thinking perhaps it's time to convert this into a real gambit by f6. So if white takes, we will take with a knight and then try to bring out the bishop and castle short in order to exploit this semi-open f-file. Well, who knows? Perhaps it's worth a try, this f6 move. In the game, black played queen e7, and now white plays h3 in order to speed up development. If black takes on f3, white will take on f3 as well, and after knight takes e5, there is queen takes e4. White remains with a sound extra pawn. A huge white advantage with the two bishops. And obviously, there is not a chance that black would play knight takes e5 here. White will not fall into this simple trap, but will of course take the knight first, and only then she will take the bishop. So, in the game, black retreated the bishop h5. It's time for white to continue development, so she plays g4. It's the correct move here. It doesn't matter really that the white king side is slightly weakened. What is important here is to bring out the pieces. Bishop g2, an excellent diagonal for this bishop, taking into account that black will very soon castle in this game. In fact, she castles at this very moment. That knight takes e5 is not a good idea. White would take and then take on b7, not only threatening the rook, but also an annoying check on c6 next move. So bishop g2, black castles. White castles as well, and black plays h5, trying to exploit the slight weakness of the white king side. It's already difficult for me to suggest anything better for black. I was thinking about knight takes e5, however, here white has a pleasant choice. She could go for f4, trying to win material in this way. There is the double threat now of f5 trapping the bishop and knight e4 trapping the queen. So this looks very nice for white, but a more cautious player could also consider the simple knight f3 followed by bishop f4 and possibly queen a4 with a leading development and interesting attacking prospects against the black king. So a matter of taste. Castles h5. Of course, white doesn't let black open up the h file, but plays e5, keeping things closed. Black plays h4 here, It appears rather slow, but it's not an easy position for black at all. b4, white is getting on with the attack, and now b5 is in the air, so black finally reverts to this plan f6, sacking a pawn in order to bring out the pieces. So white is eager to play b5, but first she takes on f6 so as to not to lose this pawn, and the pawn takes pawn. Now she goes b5. Of course, we shouldn't even think about taking on f6, because then black would take and play rook g8, and it's a completely different story. So no reason to help the knight on g8. Ordaz played b5, was knight e5, and now knight takes. In order to win time, this knight is waiting for a better square. If queen takes, the knight would probably move on to f3, and as I was saying, a good plan from here would be to play bishop f4 and queen a4 probably with a nice attack. In the game, black recaptures with a pawn, and it's time for a strategical move. If we look carefully at the pawn structure, we can see that we have a nice outpost on e4, so white plays knight e4 here. Very nice place for the knight. Not only it blocks the pawn, but also on some occasions it could move on to c5. Black played king b8, a sensible prophylactic measure, and white will now simply continue her attack with a4, a pawn assault on the queen side. It's not easy at all to suggest anything for black here. I think queen h7 makes a lot of sense. She wants to see what white will do with this proud knight. So what to do with white here? I noticed that this is the first moment in the game where the white player, Ordaz, really thought for a while. And up to this point she was playing rather quickly. But here she thought about it, because I think she noticed that the moves like, she couldn't play a move like f3, it would be terrible for the bishop, and even worse would be knight f6, because then black would benefit hugely from this open g file. This would be extremely dangerous for white. So there is only one move left, and it's queen e3. It has an odd look because now the knight is pinned to the queen, but it works out perfectly well. Black has no real way yet to exploit this pin. In the game there followed knight e7, and white now resorted to a very nice trick. If you are familiar with the open Sicilian with white, perhaps you have seen in some games that white advances his kingside pawns with g4, g5, h4, and suddenly there is a pawn sacrifice with g6 followed by h5. This is what Ordaz does now on the opposite flank. She plays b6 and then she plays a5. Very nice technique in order to open up more lines for the attack. In this case, the b file will be of huge interest for the white pieces as well as the a file. Black played knight c8. Obviously, if she takes, white will take as well, and the pawn is under attack. And if knight c6, I guess white could consider rook e5, targeting the b7 pawn. It almost looks like a Benko gambit, but in the Benko gambit, black rarely puts his king on the queen side for obvious reasons. Back to the game, a5, knight c8. It's a clever defensive move, safeguarding these squares, but unfortunately black's position is already rather dubious here. Pawn takes and knight takes. If a6, I think white could again think about moving the rook to the 5th rank, attacking this pawn. Another interesting idea could be to play f4, which will later happen in the game. However, white should be careful with this knight move, with a knight move to d6, so attacking the knight. So that is why I think that it might make more sense to play rook a5, so that we can take the pawn on e5 then, opening up the diagonal for the bishop towards the black king. In the game, black takes the knight, and it's time to see how to develop this bishop. One interesting option would be to play bishop a3 here in Benko style. However, black could take, and white takes with the queen. Black would then take on e4, and it's not clear that white will improve her attack here. It's not completely clear. Sometimes the knight can go back to c8, for example. So in the game, white plays a much better move, f4, in order to open up this diagonal for the bishop. Obviously, now pawn takes pawn would be a huge mistake due to this little trick. King a8, rook takes a7, and white will soon give mate. Yeah, this is a common tactical motive. So after f4, black played a much better move, knight e7. In this way, not only she strengthens the e5 square, but also she prepares knight c5. At this moment, white plays bishop a3. Excellent move. There was another path to victory, taking on e5 and playing queen a3. At first, this doesn't look completely clear. Black will take on e4 with the bishop, so that the knight keeps on protecting the queen side. However, white has a nice little trick here. She can play rook takes f8 in order to eliminate this defender, so that the knight can be taken next move. And if the king moves towards the center, it will be mated, something like this. Yeah, and if the king returns, there will be mate on a8, and if the king goes to e8, the queen will affect the mate. Anyway, this is a kind of computer line that's not so easy to visualize over the board. I like the way that Ordaz plays in the game with a more human bishop a3. By the way, I forgot to tell you that when I was looking at the game live, I thought about this move as well. Black is fighting against the knight on e4. And what would you do here with white? How would you continue the attack? Because white could take the a7 pawn in two different ways. My first thought was to take with the pawn. And I saw a motive based on this b7 pawn. I thought about taking d6. Well, the idea is nice. No? If black takes the queen, white will take b7. And when black takes, white takes, finally white will end up with an extra piece. However, black could play simply bishop takes d6 here. So the queen sacrifice, knight takes d6, black will simply play bishop d6, and she keeps everything under control. So this is not the right choice. Back again, if black plays here knight d6, what should we do? So my next thought was to take with the rook. However, I couldn't see completely clearly here what would happen after bishop takes e4. Of course, black takes with the bishop, so that the knight remains in a good defensive position. I thought about queen a3 in order to give mate on a8. However, after king c8, I couldn't see the path to victory, because the king will escape. For example, if we give check on c5, the king moves away, and it seems that black has saved herself here. So what we should do now is to go back, and there is one problem. There is one typical error when we are attacking. What is this error? Looking for checks. We're only looking at the checks, and sometimes we forget about more sophisticated moves. In this case, if we look carefully, we can notice that king d7 is a key idea for black. So we should try to avoid this move. We should try to prevent this idea. How can we do it? Well, there is only one way. By queen a4, white would give mate here very soon. The king cannot escape anymore. We are now threatening rook a8, and if bishop c6, we would simply take on c6, game over. So, interesting variation if black had played knight e6. Not so easy to see this variation. Take with the rook, and after bishop takes e4, queen a3, threatening mate, and this small move has to be visualized before playing this whole line. Queen a4 with a mating net underway. So back to the game. Black took on b6, f4 in order to open up this diagonal towards the black king. White, the black played knight e7 with the idea perhaps knight c5, bishop a3, a very nice move from white, and now bishop takes bishop. Again, we have to think carefully about this. We already feel that white is winning, but still we have to work out this mathematically in concrete terms. So if we take on a3, it's a very tempting move. However, black would take on e4, and when we are trying to produce this knight mate again, we will find ourselves with a little problem. Black will move to c8 instead. Black will play king c8. And if we now play rook takes a7, everything appears to be going extremely well for white. However, black has a nice defensive resource here. I don't know if you can see it. It took a while for me. Yeah, knight b8. In this way, black successfully defends against the white mating threat. Now the queen is attacked by the rook, and the black queen can also at some moment help the defense. So the game would not end here. Black is defending. So we have to be careful when the win is around the corner. So white played bishop a3, bishop takes a3, and here comes the best move in the game. Ordaz notices that this bishop and this knight are extremely important in the attack. So she sacrifices the exchange in order to keep these pieces on the board with a very nice move, f5. So black has to take on f5 and rook takes f5. White gives away a whole exchange in order to keep her attack running. It is very important to understand that in situations like this, attack and defense, the relative value of the pieces is more important than the nominal value. So these pieces, white has 4 pieces in the attack, while the black pieces aren't really helping here. This rook hardly any help, and not much help from the other rook either. So this is very, very difficult for black now. It's a very difficult position. Black tried queen f8 in order to control this square from the black queen, from the white queen. Had she played a6, white would play queen d6 check, and this looks terrible for black. For example, rook king a7, and now rook takes a6, and it's game over. Like I was telling you, this bishop and this knight are terrific attacking pieces. They are very strong here. So it doesn't matter that black is actually winning 7 points at this moment because she's mated. Back to the game, queen takes a3, so black hurries to take control of this square by queen f8, but now this is easy for white. Queen takes a7, and how to attack here? Ordaz decides that she should attack the b7 square, and in the game she gave check first, and b1. Very strong move, very strong move. Now she's threatening mate in 2 moves. Black played b6, that followed check. Yeah, if king b8, there are many good moves for white. Only one of them would be knight d6 in order to give mate on b7, the next move. What a great bishop. So king c7, queen check. The king must move upwards. If it moves downwards, there will be knight d6, and again mate on b7. So king c6, and it's time for a little combination. Now any knight move will give check here, and Ordaz opted for knight c5, a very nice touch. Black cannot take on c5 due to the mate on c7, and if she runs away with the king as in the game, black will now suffer from this move. Rook takes b6. As we all know, in the attack, material is not important. The most important thing is the activity of the pieces. So black cannot save her king here. White would give check and to start with rook f6, recovering material and winning very easily. In the game, black instead took the knight, and there followed queen c7. and checkmate. Very nice game by the Cuban player Lisandra Ordaz, a very nice attacking victory. Thank you very much, it has been a pleasure, and see you next time.